So the next topic which we will be dealing is plague. So plague is a most fatal condition and it is a zoonotic disease. Zoonotic in the sense it is caused by animals, and most of the time the involving animal here is a rodent as well as fleas are responsible for plague. It is caused by the microorganism Yersinia pestis, and most of the time plague is usually affecting your lungs, lymph nodes as well as your blood vessels. And plague is also referred as an emerging disease by WHO. And there is a type of plague which is referred as bubonic plague, where it can usually affect your lungs, it can result in pneumonia, and sometimes it can cause death. And most of the time this plague can be used as a biological weapon also, and already it has led to lot of pandemics. And next is moving on to etiology. So as I have already told, the causative organism is Yersinia pestis, and it is mainly caused by the wild rodents, especially your field mice or any other small animals are the main reservoirs of plague. And these wild rodents are usually found in deserts, mountains, and most of the time in cultivated areas and in the forest. So these infected rodents and fleas are responsible to cause this plague. Now, the other risk factors or other causes could be activities like hunting, grazing, cultivation, harvesting, construction activities. All these outdoor activities has resulted in contact of man with the fleas. So direct contact of man with the fleas has also resulted in plague. And plague is also associated with movement of people, especially movement of people or cargo, especially by sea or land. So what happens is rats and the rat flea can be easily transported in this way. So this is all the different type of rats which are responsible for plague. Then it is also seen in people with very low immunity. It could be the lower immunity compromised people, especially with malignancies or with the TM and all. Next is most of the time this plague is active all the year round. It is more common in rural areas, maybe because they are more involved in cultivation, and it is mostly seen in the places where man lives or human dwelling. In these areas, commonly plague is usually seen. Next, transmission is most of the time by air droplets, especially when the infected person coughs or sneezes, it can result in transmission of plague. Next is it could be because of direct physical contact with the infected person, or you're touching the fomites, okay, or even by soil, or fecal oral transmission. That is especially when there's rats and all, they are urinating or they are contaminating the water or the food sources and all. That time also there is high risk of transmission of plague. Next is how the fleas are getting infected. So I told us rat fleas are responsible most of the time. So when a flea is biting a human, it will contaminate the wound, and what happens is it will carry the bacteria. So most of the time that bacteria will pass into the tissue, it will circulate in the blood, it will be circulating in the lymph nodes also, and that is how you are going to get infected with plague. There are different types of plagues here. First one is bubonic plague, pneumonic plague, septicemic plague. Okay. So first one is moving on to bubonic plague. Now, bubonic plague is the most common type, okay, and usually why it is referred as bubo, because there is swelling and there is tenderness of the lymph glands. Most of the time, the bacteria is spreading through the lymphatics and through the lymph nodes, and because of that, the person will be having swelling and tenderness in the lymph nodes. And what happens is most of the time this rat fleas, they will bite the lower extremities and then they will travel through the lymphatics. And most of the time in bubonic plague, the patient can have fever along with that chills, headache. They can also have lymphadenopathy or lymphadenitis, where the lymph nodes may be enlarged most of the time, especially the lymph nodes in the groin, then sometimes axilla, neck region lymph nodes. All this will be usually enlarged in the patient. And it is told that bubonic plague will not be spread from one person to another, but the transmission of bubonic plague is very high since the rodents and the rat fleas are carrying the disease. Next type of plague is pneumonic plague. Okay, pneumonic plague is quite rare, but death is seen within 1 to 6 days because it is commonly affecting your lungs here. And most of the time, it is very highly infectious because it is transmitted by droplet infection. Okay, so one person to another person, how it transmits? Mainly by droplet infection, and that is why it is told to be highly infectious. And you even the sputum of the person will be having this bacilli. Next one is septicemic plague. Now, septicemic plague happens when the bacteria is multiplying rapidly, and in this septicemic plague, the mortality rate is 100%. Okay, and it is told to be highly life-threatening condition. Next is regarding the different modes of transmission of the flea. Okay, so different routes of transmission of Yersinia pestis to humans. One way is through the fleas. Next way is you are coming in direct contact with the infected animal, okay, or through the droplets. I have told maybe in pneumonic plague and all. So if you come in contact with the droplets of the infected person, you can get affected with the plague. Then ingestion of infected animal, especially the rat, maybe which is having the rat flea. So this could be the major modes of transmission. Next is this is just an example how there can be transmission of plague. You need not write it in your notes as such. Maybe because of the damaged grain which you have stored, it may be damaged through the urine or through other ways of the rodent. Then your domestic animals also may be affected by your fleas and all. So that is how you may usually get the plague. Next is main symptoms. So as I've already told, in bubonic plague they may have fever, headache, body pain, then accompanied with fever they can have chills, then extreme swelling and tenderness of the lymph nodes. In pneumonic plague they can have pneumonia like symptoms, and they will usually have respiratory failure, and death may be seen usually in 1 to 6 days. In septicemia plague, usually there is fever along with chills. They can have severe abdominal pain, and the patient can have hypotension and shock, and the skin usually tends to become black. Okay. Next one is diagnostic procedure. Most of the time blood investigations can be done, or you can also take the sample of fluid from the swollen lymph nodes. And if you are having pneumonic plague, you can perform an X-ray. You can also perform the endoscopy. Next is treatment. Now, most of the time you can give antibiotics, streptomycin, chloramphenicol, gentamicin, then doxycycline may be usually effective against this plague. Next is isolation is very essential. The affected individual may need to be isolated. Next is you have to destroy this rat fleas, especially by maybe using some effective antisect and with effective insecticides. Then you need to control the rodents, then maintain a good environmental sanitation, proper housing, and improving the quality of life. Next is health education among the community people, like how this rodents or rat flea is spreading plague. Next is adequate surveillance or surveys have to be done. Why you have to do surveys is because you have to report these cases, and you have to report this outbreak as early as possible. Next is moving on to the next condition, that is gas gangrene. So now gas gangrene is a rapidly progressing fatal condition where there is complete necrosis of the muscles, and because of that there is destruction of the soft tissue. Why it is called as gas gangrene? Because here there is complete necrosis of the muscles. Okay, sometimes it is also referred as myonecrosis because there is necrosis of the muscles here. And along with that, what happens is most of the time gas gangrene is caused by the Clostridium species, and these Clostridium species will produce lot of toxins. So this bacterial toxins which are produced during that time, what will happen is they will produce lot of gas. So that is why it is referred as gas gangrene. And this Clostridium species are commonly abundantly seen in the soil, especially in the dust or feces and they have also been isolated from the gastrointestinal tract, and even they are seen in the genital tract of the females. Next is the etiology of gas gangrene. So most of the time it can be because of contaminated wounds, especially because of sepsis, or if you have got crush injuries or penetrating injuries after a road traffic accident or after earthquake or after war, then because of gunshot injuries, or if you have got injured from sharp objects or post amputation, okay, or because of ischemia where there is complete loss of the blood flow. Next is risk factors. Most of the time it is told that gas gangrene is common among people who have got atherosclerosis, where there is plaque deposition, in diabetic patients, colon cancer, okay, and other than that, people who have got very low immunity, like malignant people who have got cancers, or those patients who are using lot of corticosteroids, or if the wound is contaminated already, maybe because of a foreign material or even by bacteria. So in all these cases, you can get affected with gas gangrene. Pathogenesis is the same thing. So the microorganism will enter, it will multiply, and then it will produce lot of toxins. So when ants is producing toxins, along with that, it also produces lot of gas. So because of the gas formation, what happens is it usually results in necrosis of the muscles. So that is why it is referred as myonecrosis. Along with that, it may also affect your heart, and it may result in depression of the heart, maybe because of hypoxia. Next is symptoms of gas gangrene. The patient can have fever, mainly because of the infection. Along with that, chills may be present. Complete patient can have necrosis of the muscles. They can also have destruction of the soft tissue. It may also result in decreased blood pressure, that is hypotension, shock may happen. Along with that, the patient can have severe pain in the site where the wound has occurred. They can have severe pain, then blisters may be formed along with some gas bubbles in the infected area, and usually the patient can also have uh, heartbeat may be rapid and even breathing may be rapid. So here you can see the picture of the gas gangrene here, and in such cases only management will be amputation. And most of the time there is complete necrosis here. It may result in signs and symptoms of shock, septicemia may happen or toxemia may happen. There may be renal damage and even patient can have death. Next is investigation. Most of the time blood investigations can be done, like complete blood count, ABG analysis can be performed. You can also perform liver function test, renal function test, and you can perform blood culture, and where you can find out the organism. Along with that, you can also perform polymerase chain reaction, and ELISA test can be performed. In certain cases, you can also perform CT or MRI, and even X-ray can be done. Next is prevention. Now, most of the time, whenever you have got a wound, you have to take extra care. Cleaning the wound is very essential. Avoid the contaminated material. Remove the foreign body which is present. Improve the circulation most of the time. You can start with the hyperbaric oxygen therapy. Now that is usually mostly used for patients where healing is very low. You are providing oxygen therapy here to the wounds especially. Then next is you can give injection TT to the patient. Then next what we can do is adequate wound care. Wound dressing has to be done well. Then you can start with antibiotics most of the time. Like antibiotics like penicillin is usually given. And one more thing you have to know is there is no vaccine for gas gangrene, and the dead tissue can be removed, and if it has resulted in lot of necrosis in the muscle region or in the area, in that case we can do amputation. And expiration also can be done, where you are removing the deprived area. So this is the picture of where you are performing amputation. So this is again myonecrosis, which we can see in the patient. There is complete necrosis of the muscles. So here you can see the stump region. This is the stump after the amputation. So this is actually the amputated knee here. Next is prevention. So prevention mainly includes wound care, prevent the occurrence of wound first of all, proper antibiotic prophylaxis. While you're cleaning, you can use hydrogen peroxide mixed with normal saline, then proper wound care. So this is all about gas gangrene.